Other than the character design or appearance of a VTuber, the kind of trope that they are is vital for the initial piece of attention they'll receive. It doesn't matter if you belong to a VTuber agency or not, the kind of trope or caricature you put up will matter in order to attract the right kind of audience who might tune into your stream to expect a certain vibe or experience from you. And because VTubers are anime inspired, naturally the tropes that the girls and boys have to choose will have to come from anime. If you're an indie, you're generally able to choose what kind of trope you wish to embody. But if you wish to join a VTuber agency, the task of deciding the trope is often the job of those in charge of finding talent. Because aside from looking for a great content creator, they have to be rather selective of the trope they have to put into their roster, so they can find a person that will fit the character design and the character they decided on. And one of the most common and effective go-to VTuber trope anyone can gun for is the mommy. In fact, it is so common that most VTuber generations always somehow has a mommy, or at least someone with a character design that gives the impression that they're a mommy. In Japanese media, or in any media really, the mommy is any sort of mature woman who is able to provide, pamper, or generally able to care for the characters they like or obligated to serve, usually with sexual undertones. They don't necessarily have to be actual mothers, they just have to give off a mature, motherly aura. It's pretty easy why anyone would want to become a mommy as a VTuber. From a character design point of view, it's very broad and leaves one open to a lot of character design decisions. From a money-making point of view, the market is really massive, and from a role-playing point of view, it's really easy to act on because anime has set the trope up really well, and men are easier to please than one might think. The mommy, physique-wise, are usually taller than average, hosting a not-so-modest chest size, childbearing hips, and a very curvy figure. However, they don't necessarily have to have these features because, again, the core trait of a mommy VTuber is that they're often very motherly, so even VTubers without monumental mammaries or thick thighs can be considered a mommy. However, it's a company or a VTuber's best interest to have an adequate chunk of fat on the chest and the hips part. When women get pregnant, usually their boobs grow bigger and some may even have permanently wider hips. And this helps because part of the mommy's appeal is that the VTuber is supposed to be motherly. And having big boobs and wide hips will help with that fantasy by enforcing the fact that they look like they have given birth before. Plus points if they can do a deep voice and can sexily say the phrase "ara ara" or "hi honey." Still, having these physical attributes doesn't immediately mean that a VTuber is a mommy. Again, the core aspect of the trope is how much they play of the mature lady with a motherly aura vibe. Initially, yes, some people will think that someone is a mommy, but if the talent in question gives off no motherly aura or doesn't play into the trope, they can be often delegated to other tropes like the Onesan archetype. Good examples of these are VTubers like Kyla from Holo Indonesia and Scarlett from Nijisanji. I want to talk about Scarlett for a bit because I think she's the better example. Right from the get-go, Scarlett was the most hyped member of iLuna solely for the fact that she had an S-tier character design and she had the appearance of a sexy Latina mommy, which is a surprisingly unique twist of the mommy trope. And that's weird because anime and hentai have pretty much proven that the dark-skinned MILFs are so loved and in demand, you'd expect the higher-ups of VTuber companies to start commissioning brown-skinned mommies too. Now, while a lot of people have attributed Scarlett as a mommy even now, she's actually more akin to an older sister archetype, because while her design is insanely attractive and could fit the bill of being a mommy due to her embracing the horny shit her fanbase associates her with, she's kind of clumsy and easily embarrassed, and overall she doesn't really exude much mommy energy. The clothes the mommy wears are also a big factor. If a thick, curvy VTuber is wearing young people clothes, they'll be associated with being an onesan on first impressions. But mommies have to be rather elegant in their design, sporting clothes that'll give them a mature feel, and the usual ways people do this is to give their models short or medium hair, put on the anime mom hairstyle, or be a bit bolder in showing parts of their skin. Now, again, the mommy usually gets attributed to being sexy, and fans will be explicitly horny for them. Fan arts will be lewd for days on end. As such, if one goes for the mommy vibe, they are going to have to be okay with people sexualizing them a lot and thinking that literally anything they do will have some sort of sexual undertone. However, it's also better if they do the horny baiting in moderation. Fans have to be bonked sometimes, because aside from reminding your fanbase that it gets weird at a certain point, the thing about being overly sexual as the mommy is that when you try to lean too much into the object of desire for so many people, it's going to cut off prospective viewers who are going to find you too lewd to a point of being cringe and shallow. It's going to make people form the opinion that you have nothing but your sexy avatar, lewd jokes, and that you only have sex-related material to offer, even though you might be much more complicated and interesting than that. In fact, that's the problem that haunts VShojo for the longest time. Despite the talents of the company being much more interesting, complex, and nuanced than they seem, the sentiment that a lot of VTuber fans get from them is that they're just Coomer baiters with only toilet humor to offer. Leaning into your sex appeal is a good thing, but ultimately, VTuber fans stay for your personality. Being a two-dimensional mommy that just copies the anime trope will only get you so far. That is why you also have to be something much more than an ara-ara hot dummy mommy, because god fucking damn does that get boring real fast. What you might not know if you didn't have a mother that loved you is that a mom can be either protective or supportive, and usually always both. I want to emphasize on the supportive part because a VTuber being protective, quote-unquote, borders on being jealous, and that's another trope I plan to make a video about later. Being supportive or doting on other members of the VTuber agency or general friends can often be associated with being motherly. Pair this up with a naturally mature voice and you have someone that can actually and realistically sound like they could be a mommy. Peak example of this would be none other than Nina Kosaka. There's more to being a mommy than just being a lewd ara-ara high honey sex joke spammer. You can give off an actual motherly vibe by just being an older, experienced woman who knows how to deal with people younger than you without being condescending. Being encouraging, happy, and supportive can give a mommy more depth than a shallow, sexy mommy ever could. Like I said, the more the mommy gives off the mature, motherly aura, the more they are effective in showing this trope. The sex appeal is really just the icing of the trope in question. A lot of men come for the mommy with sexual stuff in mind, but it's finding your genuine motherliness that makes them stay, which, in a sense, still makes being lewd somewhat necessary for this trope. Or does it really? What if I tell you that the mommy can also exist without being explicitly lewd? But how does that work? With the trope being so associated with sexual undertones to a point of it nearing dependence to succeed, how can you still make a mommy succeed without the sexual appeal that most people go to it for? It's hard, but it can be done. Basically, crank up that motherly aura to 11 to a point of people actually starting to see you not as a mommy, but an actual mother. So much so that it comes full circle and develops into this weird pseudo-Oedipus complex where people feel sexually strongly for this explicitly non-sexual mommy for the fact that they don't do anything explicitly sexual. Who am I talking about? Ceres Fauna. Fauna is the most popular and probably the best example of this. She's one of the VTubers that was able to make it work. But unlike most mommies, Fauna's design almost has nothing sexual going on. Her thighs and her feet are a bit yabai, yes, but this is just standard anime fairy or forest nymph design. What's more important is her behavior. Fauna rarely caters to the sexual shenanigans of her chat. She doesn't really say many sexual jokes, make off sexual references, or have a deep, sexy voice like what most mommy characters pretend or aspire to have. Instead of the deep, seductive voice that a lot of mommy VTubers embrace, Fauna's voice is gentle and soothing. It basically has almost zero sex appeal. While Fauna gives off an air of matureness and elderliness, it's not in a dominant kind of way, but more so protective and caring, like how an actual mother feels like. It's less aggressive. Instead of brute forcing her way into your boner, your heart, she coos you over into handing it to her. This unironic motherly feeling is one of the more unique ones among VTubing. But it's strange to see this kind of reaction because while Fauna sees herself as an onesan, everyone else sees her as a mommy. And that's weird because everything Fauna has going on for her should categorize her as an onesan. Her design, while mature, isn't explicitly curvy or sexual, especially her face. Her clothes are young-looking, her voice isn't seductive and deep, and she has little sex appeal appearance-wise. I've talked about this in a stream once, but when Fauna went through her Kaukini arc, I didn't find it pleasing. To non-Hololive fans or to Hololive fans that need a reminder, Fauna did this thing where she tweeted this and much to everyone's non-surprise, she intended for that to happen all this time. Now, I, alongside a lot of people who truly understood what it is to make Fauna unique, basically those of us with taste, didn't exactly appreciate this. We felt that it wasn't fitting because she was actively trying to be sexy. Fauna's sex appeal comes from the fact that she doesn't do sexually explicit things. So when Fauna does something explicitly sexy, her inherent sexual appeal becomes less. It's an interesting cross with the say-so trope that makes this form of the mommy so interesting. And the impact of this is also interesting to say the least, because while it's natural for fans of mommies to be horny on main 24/7, Fauna's fans are, well, they're not just horny, they're horny and they're needy. I know these are just jokes, but I like to pretend that they're real and that saplings are just written. Mentally stable and extremely wholesome. Her nature, pun intended, spawned this kind of fanbase. And in my opinion, this is the peak of the mommy trope. The best kind of variant of the mommy out there. Because the problem with the mommy is that people have to actively try and act being a mommy. They have to mimic and play on the anime trope itself and identify what it is that makes the mommy so likable and profitable. But when you can successfully reap the rewards of an experience that requires you to be overtly sexual without being sexual, and you can give off a truly maternal aura that is a weird turn on for many people despite your intentions, when you are naturally, effortlessly, a mommy, then you just won at this trope. However, aside from the sexual nature of the mommy, one of the weapons that the mommy has over most tropes is that being vulnerable and open can be surprisingly more wholesome and endearing. Because unlike some tropes, the mommy is required to be somewhat confident in their presentation. They have to be mature, cool, relaxed, authoritative, and be dominant. A show of this veneer of confidence breaking can be quite effective in making people appreciate you more. I don't mean to say that doing this is only exclusively good for the mommy, because being vulnerable and relatable is good for any trope and for a content creator in general. I'm just saying that doing this when playing a trope that requires you to be confident or comedic often becomes more impactful than other tropes. For example, the shitposter/comedian and the mommy being emotionally vulnerable feels much more tragic than when the say-so, the tomboy, or the heart does it. This isn't to downplay anything, I'm just telling it as it is. A mommy is usually the one taking care of you, but when you are taking care of the mommy, it can be an oddly profound experience for both the VTuber and the fanbase. It enforces and strengthens your parasocial relationship, but it can feel real, even though it's not. You can see the inherent danger in this, but you do you. In any case, the mommy is a tried and true trope that a lot of VTubers and VTuber fans love. There's no shortage of mommies in the industry. In fact, one can say that the mommy market is a bit saturated right now. People realize the inherent appeal and popularity of this trope. Unless you can pull a Fauna or join a VTuber agency that has some clout to them, it can be quite a hard sell. So yeah, that's about it. See ya.